Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this beaded Kumihimo necklace with SuperDuos. And this is what the necklace looks like. So it has this nice curve all the way around because of how we add the embellishment. It's going to sit nice in the neckline. And the embellishment here I've used is bicones, so I really like the contrast that I've used here between the matte beads and the braid and then the sparkle from the bicones. But that's obviously completely up to you what beads you want to use. But then this is the necklace of the set that are kind of made out of this technique. So the necklace looks like this, and then the bracelet. Obviously you can make them the same colours and beads to match each other so you can make it into a set. But that's the bracelet. And then also a pair of earrings here. Again, you can just use the same colours. So I'm going to have tutorials for these two separately, and the links are going to be down in the description box. But then in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make the necklace part here. So if you want to learn how to do that, then stay tuned. So to make the necklace, these are the things that we'll need. Now first off here we have a round Kumihimo disc because it is a round braid that we're making. And then the cord that I'm working with is just a 0.4mm S-lon, and I'm just using a black colour to give a nice neutral background colour to the beads. And then as for the beads here, I'm using a few different sizes and shapes, both for the braid but then also for the embellishment. The first two here I'm going to be using for the braid. So the first beads that I'm using, these are AOs. And this specific colour, if you want to know, is just matte opaque red AB. That's going to be the main part of the braid. And then also the SuperDuos that I have here, this specific colour is magic red brown. And these two, like I said, are going to be what we're going to create the braid with. Now the other beads that I have, these ones are 11Os, and this is just opaque black. So it fits with anything really. It'll give a nice contrast as well to the others. And also I have some 4mm bicones here. So all these beads are going to be used for the braid, these two to create the braid, and then I'm going to use these two, so the small rounds, the 11Os and the bicones, to add the embellishment afterwards. And then also to help add the embellishment, we're going to be using some thread here. So this is also S-lon size D. Again, I'm just using a black one so it blends in nicely, in case you can see any of it. And then I just got a beading needle as well. You can use whichever one suits you. And then finally, I have my Kumihimo ends there. And then findings, so clasp, extender chain and jump rings. So let's get all the materials that we need together and let's get started. The cords that we then need to make this necklace is 4 lengths of about 2.5 meters each, and then what we're going to be doing is finding all the ends, put them together, and then put both sides of the ends together like this, and then up where they meet, then we'll have the middle point here of all the cords together. So I'm just going to tie a regular overhand knot just like that to keep them together, but also know this is the midpoint, and you can just wrap a piece of scrap wire around that to help pull it down through the disc as well, or just use a Kumihimo weight, whatever you want to, because then the 4 lengths of cord have now turned into 8 working lengths that we're going to be using for this braid. So we then need to take all the cords here and attach them to the disc, and this is how I'm going to set them up. So I take that knot in the middle where I attach a bit of wire down through the centre of the disc, and then I distribute all the cords here, so I put one on each side of every dot all the way around, and I don't worry about the numbers at all. So that's how we need to set up the disc. And then we need to start working and making the braid. Now before we add in any beads, what I like to do is just make a little section of braid just at the beginning with just the cord here. So I'm going to take my top left cord, bring it down over the middle, and then place it on the left side of the bottom. And then I'm going to take my bottom right cord, bring it up and stay on the right side. So this is just a regular 8-strand Kumihimo braid. And then move to the next pair, so turn your disc, take your top left one, bring it down, and your bottom right one, and bring it up. And turn it again. So you just want to keep doing this until we have about 1 centimetre or 2 of braid, and then we can start adding in the beads. So now that we made that little centimetre or so of braid there coming out of the back, we can then now start adding on our beads. So this is then how you want to add your beads onto all your lengths of cord here. So it looks like this. And now what I've done with this is I've also taken a picture of this setup and put it on my website. So I'll put a link to that in the description box below. So it might be helpful looking at that in more detail. But then I'm also just going to go through the setup here. So this setup is actually quite a simple one. And you can see there's obvious patterns here, so a lot of the cords we just have one bead, and then it's quite a simple pattern on the other ones. But what I'm due to take next is my top left one, bring that down, then my bottom right one and bring that up. So if we start with the top two, on these ones I just have all AOs all the way down of the colour that I'm using here. And these ones I have 140 on each strand. And it's the same with the bottom two, exactly the same amount on both of them as well. Now as for the pairs on the sides here, so you'll be able to see the top one on the right side and the bottom one on the left side are both exactly the same as well, just full of 8/0s, and these I also have 140 on each, so all these were just 8/0s. We've got 140 beads on each length. Now the last two are the ones that have the pattern really. So what I've done on these is I start with 1 8/0, and they're both exactly the same, so this goes for both of them. Start with 1 8/0 and then super duo, 8/0, super duo, so you alternate between those two all the way down, fill up the whole strand, and I have 139 on each of these. And it's by placing your super duos like this on your strands that's going to end up making this pattern on the braid where they run up the sides on each side there. So that's how we need to add on all the beads in this case. And then by adding this amount of beads on each length of cord, this is going to end up giving about a 20-inch long braid. Now obviously if you want a longer or shorter one, what you can do is adjust the amount of beads you want on each. So you would just, if you wanted it longer, you would just add more beads onto each, and also just continue this pattern on these ones. And what you just want to make sure to do on these ones is end on an 8/0 and make sure there's one less on these two than there is on the rest of them here. Obviously you can also take some beads off if you want to, if you want it shorter. So the last thing I just want to mention is how you work with your braid. Now if you work the same way as me, that means either from the top left or the bottom right, it doesn't matter, these two are the same result you're going to get. You want to set up your beads the same way as I've done here. Now if you work from your top right or your bottom left instead, what you need to do is set up your beads a little bit differently. So imagine you have a mirror in front of your disc, and then you need to add them in that mirror image. So that means the top two will swap places, and then the bottom two swap places. Obviously that doesn't really matter here because it's the same beads, but in principle. And then on the sides we need to have the top on each side swap over the middle, and then the bottom on each side swap over the middle. Obviously it's the placement of the beads that I'm talking about. So if you work that way, you want to set up your beads in that mirror image instead, and you'll end up getting the same result. And as for what direction you turn your disc in, whether it's one way or another, that doesn't matter at all, because this is an 8-strand braid we're working with. So every time you turn your disc, no matter what direction, you're always coming to the same pair that you would have done either way. So once we then have all the beads on here and we're happy with how they're sitting, the next step is to start incorporating them into the braid. So it's also now at this point you can decide a few different things to do that might help you make the braid. Now because it is a necklace length that we're making here, we're working with very long lengths of cord and obviously a lot of beads. So what might be helpful is use something like bobbins to help wind them up to make the length shorter to work with. So that's something that could help. And also you can add a weight to the bottom of your braid here to help pull through and help give you a nice tension on your braid. So those things are completely up to you. But otherwise we need to start adding these beads into a braid. And we simply do that by continuing the exact same braid that we were just making, just with a cord. But the difference is every time we bring over a cord here, we just take the very first bead, release the bead as I'm releasing the cord, and let it drop all the way down to the middle. And then before you bring the cord over, you want to just make sure that that bead is tucked underneath the cords in the middle there. So it might fall into place by itself. If it doesn't, you can just tuck it in with your finger. So place that down, grab the next cord here, release one bead as you're releasing the cord, let it drop down, tuck it in, and then turn to your next pair. And this is really how you add in your beads. You just drop down one bead every time you move a cord. And I also have a more detailed tutorial that shows how to do this. So if you haven't really done Beaded Kumihimo yet, that might be helpful to just have a look at that first. So I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below. But then you just continue like this until you used up all the beads, so you then have your full length of braid. Then when you're done adding in all your beads, so all your cords are empty from beads there, then we just need to finish off this end of the braid as well. We're going to do that in the same way by just having a little length of cord there, just braid with the cord. So we just need to continue the braid without adding beads in. So we have that about 1 to 2 centimeters, just like we did in the beginning. So now that I've done that, what we need to do is just secure the end in place here so we can take this whole braid off the board. So this is the last pair that I just did, so I'm going to go to the opposite one, and then I'm going to take cords that are right opposite each other, cross them over the middle, tie a knot, down over the end of the braid there, place them back in, and then take the other two from the same pair that are diagonally opposite, make your knot, then go to the other pair, do the same thing. So we're just securing the end in place here, the cord, so it's not going to come undone when we take it off the disc. And it also finishes it off without being too bulky at the end here. So just like this. Once you've done that, we can then take it off, and then what we'll have is a final long braid here that's going to make the necklace, and it looks like this. So once we have a final braid here, you might want to just add a little bit of glue to this end, just so these knots stay in place while we're going to continue to work with it, because we're then going to add our embellishments next before we actually finish off the ends fully. So you can also take the wire off the other end if that's what you're using, but then we need to bring in the other beads that we're going to be using to the embellishment. So to then add the embellishments in, I'm going to start from one end of my braid here, and then I've also threaded my needle with my thread, and just really take as much as you can bear to work with, because obviously it's a long length of braid here. We need to go all the way up one side and then back down the other side. Now if you're either not comfortable working with that long length of thread, or you run out, you can always just do one side, then tie it off at the other end, and then we'll go down the other side. You can just start a new thread, so you can do that as well. But then what I need to do is, on this end we're going to start with, I need to first secure my thread. So I'm just going to go through the braid basically with my needle. Make sure you don't get any tangles. So just get your whole thread through, and I've tied a knot on the other end here. Go back and through your braid a few times. Obviously, because I'm using black thread and black cord in the braid, it blends in as well, so you're not going to be able to see it even if something is showing. So just secure this end by going back and through the braid. It's going to really tie the thread in place there. When your thread is then nicely attached at the end here, then I'm just going to make my way down towards where the beads start, so down through the braid, and just get to one of the first beads that we run into. And then come out just before, so something like this, because then we just need to go through a few beads first to get up to the very first SuperDuo and make it nice and seamless so we can't see any thread. So I'm in front of this bead now, so I'm just going to go through it and pull your thread all the way. So basically we're just going through the beads here in kind of like a thread path. I'm going to go through the next one over to the side, basically the one that's then going to be right in front of my first SuperDuo there. That's the one I want to come out of. So straight opposite that first SuperDuo. Pull all the way through, and then we need to start using our first few beads. So as you can see here, just get the thread in, and then we can't see the thread at all because it blends in between the beads there. So I'm going to bring in my first beads. I'm going to be using my little ones here, and then also the bicones that we obviously need for the embellishment, the main part of the embellishment. So I have these ready. The first ones we just need to use are these little ones, just to connect from where we are now up into the very first SuperDuo. So I'm going to take 3 of those and then go through the top hole, through the open hole there from the first SuperDuo. Again, just to avoid seeing any thread really. Pull all the way through, so like that, and then connects nicely from the end. Now we obviously have 2 sides to this. Both sides aren't going to be the same, because what we need to do is, because it's a necklace, we need to make sure that we get a curve in the necklace, or a natural curve, so it's going to lay nicely when we wear it. So what side you do first doesn't really matter, but I'm going to do kind of the inside first. So on this side, all we're going to do is add 1 bicone in between each of the SuperDuos there. So I put 1 bicone on, I jump over to the next SuperDuo, the top hole that's not been used, and then just pull my thread all the way through, and then your bicone is going to end up sitting right there in between. Because then what this is going to do, because the bicones are a little bit smaller than the gap in between, so when we pull them, it's going to end up giving it a nice natural curve. So what we want to do is just basically keep doing this all the way down this side of the braid, adding one bicone in between until we get to the other end, and then we need to start making our way back up the other side again. When you then reached all the way up to the other end here with all your bicones in between, then we just need to do the same thing here that we did on the other end to begin with. So I'm going to pick up 3 of my 11-ohs, and then I'm going to go into my 8-oh on the braid there that's straight across from it. So we have 2 just before, kind of going between them and go into the next one. And I'm just going to go straight out into the very last bead on the braid as well. And just pull all the way through. And then we're at this end. So obviously if you still have thread left and you have enough to go down the other end again, just keep doing that. So what we just want to do now is just pull this thread just a little bit, just to make sure all the bicones, you don't have too much gap in certain ones and all that, just so they're nice and even. You don't want to pull too tight because then it's really going to curl up, but just pull so you have a gentle curve here all the way around. And then what I'm going to do is wherever my thread came out here, from that very last bead, I'm going to go through the braid to the other side. And then actually what I would just prefer to do is go through the braid here just a couple of times before we then start adding the beads into the other side. And obviously if you run out of cord or thread, or if you didn't have enough from the beginning on purpose, then you would just tie it off here and then start a new thread. But otherwise, if you do have enough, I would just go back and forth a few times, just so the end here is pretty nice and secure. And then we just want to start out this side the exact same way. So first go through your 2 beads there and end up right in front of the first SuperDuo. And then also to get to that very first SuperDuo, I'm also going to just do the same thing as I did on the other side. So that's take 3 of my 11-ohs, to just kind of bridge that gap with the beads instead of just the bare thread, up to the very first bicone there, or the very first SuperDuo, sorry, before we then start adding in the bicones as well. So just get these in place. So we have that. So now what we need to do, just now double check before going any further that everything is sitting nicely, because then what we need to do is add in the embellishments on the outside here. So for this, what I'm going to do is take 1 11-oh and then 1 bicone and then 1 11-oh. So we have the bicone in the middle with 1 11-oh on each side, just like that. And then just go straight over to the next SuperDuo, pull all the way through, and then this is basically going to be the pattern all the way down this side of the braid, which is then going to kind of be the outside, you could say. It's going to end up getting that natural curve and line nicely around the neck. So like that, so that we have a bit more spacing there in between these ones by adding in those 11-ohs in between. And you just continue like this all the way down to the other end. Once you've then reached all the way up to the other end here, we just do the same thing. You want to finish with those 3 11-ohs right there at the end, and then go back through to the braid there. Now what I just want to say as well is, if you then go back and look at your braid, if you then find that some of the beads or some of the thread is a little bit loose compared to what you wanted it to be, what you can always do is go back through all the embellishment again, so basically doubling up the thread, and that will also give it more security, so make it stronger. So that's completely up to you, that's something you can do. But otherwise, and once you get to the end here, all you want to do is again go through the braid a few times, but then also I'm going to tie off the thread by just going through like before, but then instead of pulling it all the way through, I'm going to just leave a bit of a loop there. Then I'm going to go through that with my needle a couple of times and pull it tight so we end up getting a knot there. And you can do this a couple of times as well, just to tie off the thread. And you've done that, you can cut it off, and then all that's left to do is finish off the ends of your braid, and that's using the Kumihimo ends that I'm going to be using. I already have a tutorial that shows how to do that, so I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below, so you can go and have a look at that if you need to. So when you then attach your Kumihimo ends there, let your glue dry, and then attach whatever clasp you want to use, or extended chain and lots of claw clasp in this case, then you'll have your finished necklace, and it'll look something like this, with your nice embellishment there on the braid. And I really like the shimmer you get from the bicones. It gives a nice sparkle with a contrast against the matte beads on the braid. Well, that's just personal preference, obviously. You can choose whatever beads you want to for yours. So this is what it looks like, and because we added the embellishment this way, it gets this nice curve all the way around the neckline. So that's the necklace here, how you make that. And then obviously you can make the bracelet or the earrings as well if you want to. You can make a full set if you want to do it in matching colours. So that's how you make this. These videos are going to be up separately, so links are going to be down in the description box below. But that's how you make the necklace part of this set. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this inside beaded Kumihimo braid, but using two colours. And this is what it looks like. So this is the effect that you get. And I'm just using a light blue and a dark blue in beads, and then I'm using a black leather cord, and just to provide that contrast in between the beads. So you achieve this nice pattern, and it gives a really nice effect, I think. So if you want to learn how to make